The light that I have now, as a white woman who leads a black-led sport and celebrated here, I want to show a light on black women. They don't get the media coverage that they deserve. They've given so much to this sport, the community, and society as a whole, and their value is undeniable. And in the WNBA, last season, the postseason awards, 80% of the winners were black, but they got half the amount of coverage as the white athletes. So I think it's time for change. I think we should use this power together to also celebrate black women. So to Maria Taylor, Robin Roberts, Maya Moore, Odyssey Alexander, to all the incredible black women in my life, on my teams, to Breonna Taylor and all the lives lost, and to those names who have not yet learned, but I hope to share, I stand behind you, and I'll continue to follow you and follow your lead and fight for you guys. So I just want to say thank you for everything.
Hi guys, my name is Kelvin, and you're welcome back to the channel. They don't want you to hear this. A white woman in the South stood up, looked at her own people, and told the truth out loud. And the response? Threats. A brick through her window. A police officer calling her a race traitor. Talk of a cross burning on her lawn. All because she opened a coffee shop next to black-owned businesses, hired a mixed staff, showed up for black kids, and refused to stay quiet when white boys in a group chat talked about lynching a black teenager for dating a white girl. She said something simple and dangerous. Black people have been hit harder, longer, and in more places than almost any other group on earth. And somehow they are still here, still rising, still showing more grace than a lot of us ever learned. She said black communities made her feel freer than the white circles she grew up in. She said she loves black people, not as a performance, not as a trend, just loves them. And for that, parts of white America tried to destroy her. That story is not an isolated incident. It is a mirror. Because the same mindset that called her a traitor is the same mindset that has kept this country from doing something every other developed nation managed to do a long time ago. National health care. America is the only wealthy country on earth that still treats health care like a privilege instead of a right. And I am going to say the part they never put in the textbooks. One of the main reasons is white racism, straight up. Not complicated policy debates. Not American exceptionalism, racism, the kind that decided if black people could not get decent medical care, the whole race might just fade away in a couple of generations. Problem solved. That is not conspiracy talk. That is the historical record when you stop sugarcoating it. Teddy Roosevelt tried to move the country toward national health insurance over 100 years ago. The answer from the powerful white interests of the time was no. They did not want black people covered. Franklin Roosevelt tried again during the New Deal. Same answer, no. We are not giving that to them. Harry Truman came in after the war and pushed hard for national health insurance in 1945 and 1947. The opposition was fierce, and again, race was right in the middle of it. They could not say the quiet part too loud in public, so they found another way. When Medicare finally arrived in 1965, they built in a deliberate gap, a 20% hole. You still had to cover a big chunk of the doctor bill or the hospital bill yourself. That gap was never just about shared responsibility. It was a filter. Poor black families would think twice before walking into that office or that emergency room. Discourage them from showing up. Let the system quietly do what open violence used to do. Let that sink in. A white woman in Memphis got threatened for simply standing with black people in her own community, and the same racial logic that targeted her has shaped the single biggest failure of American public policy for over a century. Wake up.
I'm going to cry again. Y'all are going to make fun of me again, but go ahead, because there are some things that are worthy of tears. And I have been learning over the past few months that the black community is more loving, more forgiving, more accepting than we have any right to expect them to be. And it's overwhelmed me in a good way. So a couple of months ago, I posted a video because I had been thinking about why is it that throughout centuries on continents all over the place that black people have been targeted for such horrific treatment and such oppression. Why this group? And the more I thought about it, I'm like, there's something special. They they have to, you know, there's something special. Do you have some magic or some power? And I posted that as a question in the comments. I learned the answer in the comments, but not in the way you think. Now, there were people who gave me good information about you know, historical concepts and things like that, and I'm still learning about that. But what I mean is, in the way they responded to my comments, I can see that there is something special, and that is just by genuinely asking a question, because I want to stop it. I want the world to be different. I don't want this to happen again, and people keep being treated like that. The vast majority of the Black people who commented on my video were so like, we love you, sis. Here's what you need to know. Or, you know, just for asking the question, you know, we love you and we accept you. And I'm like, I got mad at somebody at the HEB for cutting in front of the line of me. And you can forgive, you know, a whole race of people when we come to you and say, we're sorry and we want to learn. That level of love and acceptance and forgiveness is really jaw-dropping to me, and that shows me a bit of what I was asking. You know, yes, there are other gifts and talents and historically things that set the Black race apart, but I saw in my comments how kind, how loving, I mean, almost to a degree that I can't even fathom. And I go back and read those comments a lot, and I want to just thank everybody who took the time to speak to me. A couple of you were like, why are you so nervous in this video? I was nervous because these are conversations that I want to have, but I'm not sure I know how to start them or have them without being offensive, because I know there are all kinds of things. I am just learning the roots of certain words that I say, that I grew up saying, that I had no idea were racist. And so I'm a little bit terrified, because I want to learn. I want you guys to adopt me. It's what I want, but I want to learn, and I'm afraid that I don't even have the right words to start the learning. But, and some of that in my video was sadness and shame that I knew racism was real. I mean, I've worked in the criminal justice system, and I have seen it firsthand, but I missed so much until I started raising biracial children. And I'm ashamed that it took it being personal to me before I realized how deep the racism ran. So to all of you who took the time to comment, and those of you who have been so kind, and to the few of you that said, we don't trust you and we're not giving you our secrets, I respect you too. I wouldn't trust me if I were you. That's why the majority of people who are so free to say, come on in, sis, we got you. It has meant more to me than I can say. Thank you. Go love your neighbor.
Y'all know I grew up in the South, and I spent a lot of time in Memphis, and we bought a old farmhouse on the outskirts of Memphis, and I decided to open a coffee shop in that little town. And let me tell you, this might be a few-parter, I don't know. So the town where we moved to is about 800 people, and of that, the population was 85% Black. I never thought it was an issue. In fact, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed living in a town like that. So I decided I was going to open a coffee shop on the little town square. And it was right next to a Black barber shop. And across the street, there was a tattoo shop that was also a Black shop. So I opened my coffee shop, and the first thing I did when coming into that neighborhood was I went to all the shops around me, and I brought them cookies and cinnamon rolls and things I was going to be baking at my... I know, it's funny. Baking at my cafe. So I remember going to the barbershop for the first time, and they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And I said, hey, y'all, I had been in California for 20 years, 30 years at this time. So I came back, I'm like, I'm from California. I'm opening this coffee shop here. Here are some of my baked goods. And we became friends, really good friends, to where I was hosting, like NAACP book signings in my coffee shop. My staff was entirely mixed. There was every person there that worked. It was always the white people who came into my business and asked me, is this a white or a black business? Now, having lived in California for 20 years and having not spent so much time in that part of the South, I didn't understand. So I didn't understand that they were labeling me because I was friendly to the black businesses. I ended up with a brick through my window. I ended up being threatened with a cross burning on my lawn. I had a cop threaten to shoot me because I was a race traitor. They even called me a carpetbagger. So anyways, the business did not work out financially, feasibly. The community was not supporting it. So years go by, I closed the coffee shop, and there is a racist incident at my daughter's school. These boys were threatening over group chat to lynch, yes, lynch, a black boy because he was dating a little white girl. So at their school, their principal made the white boys write a 10-page essay because they were baseball players and they were from a good family. So it sparked a sit-in. It sparked a protest. Now, when my daughter called me and said, Mom, we're going to participate in the sit-in, I rushed down there with pizzas and food and water and was ready to sit there and make sure these kids had what they need. Now, tell me, y'all, when I got there, why was I the only white mom there? I was the only white person. Me and my daughter were the only white people there. I've never been so embarrassed, and I actually got on the news. I opened my big mouth and yelled about how ashamed I was that I was the only white person there and that all parents should be coming out for this. The white community did not like that. That's when I got the threaten the cross burning on my lawn. But after that protest, after we had been supporting the kids and talking on the news and talking to BuzzFeed and talking all this stuff, there was a gathering at the black church after the protest. Now, by this time my husband had come down because I told him, like, hey, we need more white people here. And there was another white friend of mine who actually, she was there from the beginning, Hayden. So anyways, everyone walks over to the black church. And as we're walking into the black church, a big man stepped up to bar the entrance of my husband and I because we're white. And Mookie, my friend from the barbershop, came out and said, nah, they one of us. And so we came in and we heard the plans and we were helping implement the plans as far where to go from here. Now, you'll notice one of my pinned posts is my daughter standing up for the kids and asking the tough questions. So what came out of this, the principal was fired, although he was moved to the county over and rehired. The superintendent, the one who sounds like Mr. Garrison in South Park in that clip, nothing ever happened to him. The boys eventually did get suspended, but they were allowed to play on baseball. So, not a lot happened. But what happened was I saw who the community really was and who is holding the community up. This county is a majority black county. The city is a majority black city. And at the time, it was still run by a few white people. When I left, a black mayor had taken over, and there were more black people involved in the business side of that small town. But what I know is that once Mookie opened that door and said, nah, they one of us, I knew I was. And so this movement doesn't surprise me as much as it surprises other black people, just because where I come from, where my family from, who was my family in that town as a carpetbagger who came from California, who was not accepted by the white people because I was not from there. The black community accepted me. All my tattoos are done by a black artist. And I don't know what my point to this is. just that I wanted to talk about it. It's hard to talk about in white circles because they look at me like I'm crazy. And they're like, what were you doing? I'm just saying.
I'm autistic and I love black people. And I know people are going to say, oh, you're trying to be one of them. And I'm not. But growing up in a white home around white people and mostly white classmates, I was never allowed to say what I thought. Emotions had to be muted. And it was like there was a part of me that I was not allowed to express at all times. And then I got around black people, just around the black community, and you were allowed to cry. You were allowed to be mad. And the main thing is you were allowed to have an emotion without people personalizing it. Like, I could flip out and they'd be like, oh, she's on some BS today, or don't F with her today. And it wasn't personal. And that was such a gift to me, because that was something that I never had. So, and that's just one of the reasons why, but I just enjoy black culture because you're allowed to be you.
Dear black girls, the time has come. I have something on my chest, but I cannot hold it anymore. So I'm just gonna say it. I invite you. It's been years. I invite your genes. I can't believe most of you don't even get old. You guys don't age, or what's the problem in here? I don't see the majority of you fine lines under your eyes. What do you mean you're 35 and you look like 23? God has his favorites and I saw it. What about the lips? What about those juicy lips, those nice lips, those lips that looks plump and is natural in the same time? What about the buttock? What about the fat, juicy buttock? You think that's fair? Do you think that's normal? What about that nice skin that when you apply a little bit of foundation, a little bit of makeup, you just get a glow? Yep. I have all the reasons to invite you. You see this lip combo over here? Yep, that's because of you. Because before you, I even hated gloss. I just couldn't see myself wearing gloss. Now this is my lip combo every day almost. And if you ever saw me with braids or any African hairstyle, it's because I loved it on you guys. And it's not because I wanted to be black, it's because I actually wanted to slay in it as well. Why is it just you that you want to slay in it when I can slay in it as well? Overall, I think your genes are crazy good, and I invite you for that, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, but in a good way, you know. I wish I had all these things, because there's a lot of things you guys have and I don't, and I spend money on it because I don't, right? Just in case you have any insecurity, I want you to know you're beautiful. And I find myself turning my head after you on the street. So hope this message got to you, and I hope you're gonna enjoy your day, and remember, you're beautiful.
Hey, Cracker. Listen, I know nuance is dead with you type of whiteys, but are you aware that all crime is racial? And that people commit crimes against their own race more than anybody else? The number one human unaliver of white people is white people. But please explain to me how, as white people, with all of the social and political and financial and historical advantages that you wrongfully have, still manage to do this to each other. You are not marginalized, you are not over-policed, you are not marginalized in any way, born with privileges that you did not earn simply because you were white. And yet, despite that, 6 times a day, a cracker unalives a cracker. But you are going to focus on the most beat down and opportunity robbed people in the history of the United States. Expose yourself, dude.
Black folks are some of the most empathetic people I've ever met. This year, there was this whole thing that popped off on a corner of TikTok where a group of black folks decided that gingers, redheads, were an honorary member of the black community. It sparked this beautiful exchange of the deepest empathy I've ever heard expressed ever for the redhead experience that most people don't really think about or care about. Redheads tend to get really bullied for no reason by other white people. It's some kind of branch off of this racist, colorist, I'm going to judge you and treat you differently based on your aesthetic and not based on your personality or your merit. It's part of this just like desire for violence sake and having a hierarchy, and you're lower on the totem pole just cause. And maybe secretly it's because people are like, that's kind of cool, but I don't have that and I'm jealous, so let me just make it a bad thing. Just like how many people who are pretty racist also consume sports and music and all sorts of things that are created by Black folks. They secretly love and admire it while also feeling threatened by it because they know they can't be it. But my experience interfacing in the Black community is truly this concept of do unto others as you would want done unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself. The love I have received and felt from the Black community is like nothing I've ever felt in my entire life. When I've matched that energy, when I've met them on that level of empathy and connection and respect, it gets deeper. The well of empathy and connection is profound. It's, again, deeper than anything I've ever experienced in any other community. And I think most white folks miss out on this because of all of this division and hate. We are taught from a young age to be divided, to mistrust each other. And white folks are indoctrinated to hate and fear Black folks so that we can justify their treatment. It's easier to treat someone poorly if they're the enemy or if you feel like you're somehow victimized by them. I've never truly been victimized by Black folks. Yes, there have been isolated moments of violence and crime and whatever, and the media runs with that as propaganda to keep pushing this race war. And I find it interesting that people like CK clearly had deep disdain for Black people and empathy. To me, those things go hand in hand. And even though that whole situation was a white-on-white crime, even a conservative-on-conservative crime, they've managed to blame it on Black folks who had nothing to do with it. And now there are these lynchings of Black men. They're blamed for things they are not involved in at all. And this has been the story of America. Every toxic family needs a scapegoat, that black sheep, oftentimes that spiritually awake person that sees what's not right and what's not just and points it out, or is doing all this emotional labor and physical labor trying to keep the peace and make things work. It's exhausting. And at a certain point, they know they gotta just get me out of this family and let me go do my own thing and create boundaries because all y'all do is hurt me. You've experienced that with your family and you've had to like cut off from people for being so toxic. Either join them in the family abuse and the cycles of violence, or you get free from it. You get really choosy about who you allow in and who's in your circle to keep yourself safe. That's why everyone's not invited to the cookout. We're not inviting backstabbers into our homes. All people who are burned learn over time to be selective with where you put your energy. You learn to notice exploitation and manipulation and people who are not on your side. This is true if you identify as an empath, regardless of what race you are. If you've experienced narcissistic abuse, once you wake up to it and you learn to set boundaries and you learn to sniff it and spot it a mile away, you start moving differently, don't you? You're still that same loving person that you've always been. That is still your core essence, but you're not giving that to just everyone necessarily, especially if they're giving off a red flag vibe. So when I hear in white circles, people say, I don't know, every time I've interacted with Black people, they're rude. I'm like, are they? Or are they responding to your energy? Are they mirroring? So if you're watching this and you're white and you don't have any Black friends, you need to do deeper work, because the more you do the work, the more that you're vocal about it, the more all of a sudden you will have Black friends coming out ready to ride for you. So long as you show that you're going to ride for them back legitimately and not poof when times get hard. That's that empathy with action. It's time for us to move differently.
This is not ancient history. This is the operating system. Every other developed country figured out that a healthy population is a national strength. Canada, Britain, France, Germany, Japan, Australia, they all have some form of universal or near-universal coverage. America, we still have people rationing insulin, skipping cancer screenings, dying in waiting rooms because they cannot afford the deductible. And we act like this is normal. It is not normal. It is a choice. And that choice has racial DNA all over it. Look at the pattern. When national health care was proposed, the loudest, most organized resistance came from the same political and medical establishments that fought desegregation, that fought voting rights, that fought fair housing. The American Medical Association ran campaigns calling it socialized medicine, but the quiet conversations in certain rooms were about who would be sitting in those waiting rooms, who would be getting the same quality of care, who might live longer and have more children and change the demographics. They did not need to write it on a billboard. They just needed to keep the door half closed, make the system just expensive enough, just complicated enough, just full of enough gaps that the poorest communities, disproportionately black communities, would stay sick, stay behind, stay quiet. That 20% coinsurance was not an accident of accounting. It was a feature. It still functions that way today. Black Americans still have higher rates of untreated chronic illness, higher maternal mortality, shorter life expectancy, and too many zip codes. The data is not subtle. The history is not subtle. Only the excuses are subtle. And here is the part that should make every honest white person uncomfortable. The same cultural reflex that sent threats to that woman in Memphis is the same reflex that still treats universal health care as somehow un-American. Because deep down, some people still believe that if the system works equally for everyone, then those people will get something they did not earn. The same logic that said a white woman who befriends black neighbors and defends black children is a race traitor is the logic that says a black family should not have the same shot at a healthy life as a white family. She talked about feeling more accepted, more emotionally free around black people than in the white spaces she came from. That should tell us something. A lot of white culture still polices emotion, still polices loyalty, still polices who you are allowed to care about. Step outside that line and you get the brick, the threat, the label. Stay inside the line and you get to pretend the healthcare gap is just about freedom and markets. It is not. It is about power. It is about who was never supposed to thrive. And it is about a country that would rather keep a broken system than admit that black survival and black flourishing were never the goal of the people who designed the obstacles. I am not saying every white person who opposes single-payer is a secret Klansman. I am saying the historical foundation of that opposition is soaked in racial hierarchy, and we are still living inside the house that hierarchy built. Until we name it, we cannot fix it. That woman near Memphis did not ask for a statue. She asked for basic decency. She got a target on her back instead. The same forces that put that target there are the forces that still fight against the idea that every American, black, white, whoever, deserves health care without going bankrupt. Wake up, white America. Wake up, white people everywhere who still think this is someone else's problem. Black people are not your enemy. The system that was designed to thin them out is the enemy of all of us. The woman they tried to silence is still speaking. The history they tried to bury is still bleeding into the present. And the choice is still in front of us. We can keep pretending that America's refusal to join the rest of the developed world on health care is just about taxes or bureaucracy or personal responsibility. Or we can finally admit that race was never a side issue. It was one of the load-bearing walls. Look at her story. Look at the record. Then decide which side of the mirror you want to stand on. Black people are not the threat. The silence is. That's the truth. Now, what are you going to do with it?